November 9th, 1982. This is Joe Todd. Interview with Cora Lee King.
Born and reared at Boggy Depot, Indian Territory.
Who is this?
Joe?
Oh,
Yeah.
Benton Ferguson.
Joe?
You
Did
leave
you
the
say you
door.
work with Oklahoma?
No, the Oklahoma Historical Society.
Oklahoma Historical Society.
That's by the Capitol building.
Mm-hmm. I
And
thought you
that-
were getting live stories or something.
Yes, sir. I work for the oral history program as part of the archives division of the museum, and I work with them.
Well, are you looking for something sort of outstanding, is it unusual, or?
Everyone's outstanding.
Huh?
Oh, I'm looking for early day oil field stories.
Or the oil field stories?
Yeah, or anything really, any early day Oklahoma stories. And I want to come and talk to you.
I thought of dropping it, I wasn't sure. I came here in Indian Territory days, and I lived on one farm from that time until I was 8 years old.
Mrs. King,
Yes,
where were you born?
I was born near the bank of the Ohio River, the shortest bend and the deepest water in the Ohio River, just a mile or so above where the Lincolns crossed the Ohio River into Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
My great,
What year were you born?
huh?
What year were you born?
1888.
1888.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The shortest bend and the deepest water in the Ohio River.
That's where the Lincolns crossed?
They crossed the Ohio River at that place, just below the bend.
What's the name of the town?
Oh, it's off the map now. In Mead County, below Brandenburg, where Brandenburg had that terrible storm,
Mm-hmm.
you know, here a few years ago.
Right.
Where were you? Are you familiar with Oklahoma?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I was born there and came to Oklahoma in 1901.
1901.
March 1901, the year of the draw, the year that that they drew claims, not races, not the horse races, or the run, not the run, but it was the draw, 1901.
Were you in that draw?
No, my father was.
Did he draw a claim?
No, he drew a blank number, and then he stayed in Oklahoma.
What part?
He landed at Dover, Oklahoma, on the Rock Island Railroad at about 11 o'clock in the day, and went into Kingfisher County because he knew a man that had come out to Kansas when the young fellow was young. He came out here and several years before that and married. And then my father had correspondence with him, and when he sold his farm on the banks of the Ohio River, he came to Oklahoma to this man's place. And this man, Perry Lonigan's parents died. They never come, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And now let's see. I don't want to string my story out and get lost.
Let me ask you a question.
All right, ask any question.
Okay, what is your first recollection of your childhood back in Indiana? Is that where you were born?
No, I was born in Kentucky.
Kentucky.
On the banks of the Ohio River.
What's your first memory of that?
Of the banks of the Ohio River?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, they couldn't keep me in the house, and I liked to walk and wander. And I went to the old doctor's house across the street, and the doctor's wife said, your mother don't know where you are. And I'd get out of the house and go walking. And she said, you don't know where, your mother don't know where you are. I said, well, she don't care. I took care of myself.
How old were you?
Wait a minute. I think it was 4 years old.
Mm-hmm. And that was in Mead County, Kentucky?
Mead County, the lower part of Mead County, Kentucky, at Wolf Creek. Wolf Creek, and the Wolf Creek post office finally, the government took it up.
Yep. What was Wolf Creek like?
One street.
How many people lived there?
I've heard it said when there was a storm and there was some people came there to see how the people were faring there we were in the flood years and years afterwards, and they asked how many people, and I remember a cousin of mine says, I told the man that was getting history and getting information as to how the people were faring here on Wolf Creek. He still had the post office at that time, and I told him we had I would think about 75 people.
Mm-hmm. That was in the 1890s?
Oh, no, you're talking, that was after I went back there and married.
Oh, okay. And you came to Oklahoma in 1901?
1901 and landed at Dover.
What was the trip like coming to Oklahoma? Did you come by train?
Oh, yes, sure we had to.
You didn't come by a wagon then?
No, I rode and slept in a covered wagon, though, after we came to Oklahoma.
Yeah. What was the trip like to Oklahoma?
Oh, the trip was, well, we left that place in Mead County on the river by steamboat, old-fashioned steamboat. They called it the packet number for the people that traveled and some shipping and was transacted and done there. But we took I know I looked up at my mother and I knew when we left, see, that we were leaving, and I said, I wish we were back home. Mm-hmm. I remember that and my brother, a 12-year-old boy, a 13-year-old boy, cried all day on that boat because we were leaving Kentucky.
Where were you heading?
Huh?
Were you going downriver?
Yes, had to go downriver. We went down to Evansville, Indiana, and caught the first train I ever saw. In the night. We got there in the night. And in Evansville, Indiana. And then we took the train, and traveled all night. And the next morning, we were in St. Louis. And we took a train out of St. Louis, the Wabash Line. I've heard my father talk about that. I think it was the Wabash Line out of St. Louis for Kansas City. We had to go all the way around. The Oklahoma wasn't statehood then. And we went to Kansas City, and I remember we had to wait several hours for a train. And then the next day at 11 o'clock, we took the 10 o'clock. The 10 o'clock train out of Kansas City. I've heard my parents talk about the time. And we came to Kansas City, out of Kansas City to Oklahoma, and I saw the first Hereford cattle the next day. Those white-headed cattle on the farms in Oklahoma. There was homesteads in Oklahoma then, many of them. That was in 1901. And we got off the train at Dover and stayed all that that day, the rest of the day, it was 11 o'clock when we arrived there. The next day, then my father hired a livery team, had to have 2 horses, you know, and went 12 miles out in the country to Kingfisher County from Dover, and there, and to Perry Lonigan's farm. And we stayed a few days at the Lonigans. He come back then. He didn't take us with us out there. He just went out to see if Lonigan had lodging for us on his farm, and we were welcome. We had to wait to receive a welcome. And Lonigan, the next day then, was Sunday. See, Saturday he went to Lonigan's farm. Sunday, Lonigan's team and a hired man from his farm come to Dover and picked us up and took us out to his farm. And the hotel that we put up at served meals family style on a long table in their dining room. This man that run the hotel was building a flour mill, an Iowa man, and had his family with him when he landed in Dover, of course, before we ever went there. And he had to have a place to live, and he couldn't find it, hardly. So he saw his opportunity, and anyway, he was going to into business. And he built a flour mill, and his wife ran the hotel, and of course, the farmers for miles around, that was in Kingfisher County, for miles around would come there with their wheat to his flour mill. So he had the hotel and he had the flour mill.
How was the flour mill powered? Was it a windmill or a water wheel?
Oh, it was wind. Every farm had a windmill.
So he ran his mill with the windmill?
No, a flour mill. It was run by machinery.
By machinery?
By machinery.
Okay.
No.
When you first came to Dover, what was Dover like?
Well, I looked around. I remember seeing that and seeing the sand. It was just right near the Arkansas River. And see the sand. And I'd never seen so much sand, only right on the banks of the High River before I left Kentucky. Now then, you ask me some more questions and I can tell you.
How long did you live in Dover?
Left there Sunday. We arrived there at 11 o'clock on the train, the Rock Island train, and left there and the next day, you see, my father visited Perry Lonigan he had married out in Oklahoma. He was a Kentucky boy and he never took his family back to Kentucky. He, with him, never went back. He come back on a visit. But he had, and this little town, he lived near the little town of Kiel. You ever hear Kiel?
Mm-hmm.
You know where it got its name?
No, ma'am.
Perry Lonigan's father, Old Man Yorkie. Old Man Yorkie was a full-blooded German, born in Germany, and come over here, and then sent for his family. And his wife was 6 months old when they came. And Perry Lonigan he was in the run. He was in the last big run. Wait a minute, I'll give you the date now. April, the 16th of April. 16th of April was the last big run, and that was the Cheyenne country. That was the Cheyenne Indian tribe had been given or lived in that part of the country. And they lived over there near the Gypsum Hills, and near the, where there was gypsum in the water. Had bad water to contend with in some places. And his wife was 6 months old when she came to the United States. Her father was already here, and her mother came and brought about 3 or 4 children. Well, then when she grew up, she married Lonigan, this Kentucky boy, and who had been in the run. And I think, wait a minute. His claim, his farm was 9 years old when we came out. Perry Lonigan had been in the run 9 years before. And that was right after the Spanish, the Spanish-American War ended in, I think, 98. And Lonigan had been on his farm since the 16th of April. And his President William McKinley's memorial funeral preached in Keel, Oklahoma. And in October, when they had dismissed school that day but announced it, and everybody in the country had turned out for the memorial funeral for President McKinley. Teddy Roosevelt had been in the Spanish-American War, and when after the war was over, he was McKinley's vice president elected on the ticket. And the Keel got its name. Then they came into this new country after the run and staked out their claims. And Lonigan's father-in-law, before he had married the old man's daughter, old man Yerke, and old man Whalen, and there was 3 men named Keel for Kiel, Germany. Named it for Kiel, Germany. Did you know why Kiel lost its name?
No, ma'am.
When the First World War came on. The First World War came on. You know when that was. Wait a minute. The First World War came on. McKinley was elected president right after that. No. That's the Spanish-American War.
Right.
That where McKinley was, and Teddy Roosevelt. I remember seeing Teddy Roosevelt's children's picture in the paper. 4 children. Kermit Roosevelt, the one that was killed in our First World War. Kermit, as flyer, he was a little boy there on his father's lap in the picture of the newspaper with curls. Well, going back and picking up, when my father didn't get a claim, see, I'll say a blank number, the land was all gone. When the draw came on in, wait a minute, in the 16th, the 19th of April, I want to go back and retrace that, was the last run. Then the 16th, in 1901, then the next, when we came, and when, in 16th of August, that's when the draw started. And everybody went to the celebration in Lawton, Oklahoma. We had gone down to Lawton, but before we went to Lawton, my father leased the land, an Indian land, Dave Bighead. Dave Bighead's father was an old chief, and that was in Blaine County. We left Kingfisher County, went out to Blaine County and lived a year. And my father broke the first sod in Dave Big Head, see, by his father's right, he was Indian, you see, and he had already been given by the government his claim, his land. It wasn't a claim, it was the Indian land. And my father went to cantonment. You know where cantonment is?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, out there in Blaine County. Do you know where cantonment
Yes,
is?
ma'am.
That was a government agency. My father went up there and leased with, through the government, that 160 acres of land at Eagle City. Eagle City had got a railroad, Frisco Railroad, and we lived there a year.
What year was that?
Wait a minute. Well, I can't tell you exactly which year, but it was right after we'd been in Kingfisher County a year and leased the land. I want to ask you a personal question.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you a Mason?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Old man Garrison in Keel, Oklahoma, Keel, he was a Mason. My father was a Mason. His father was a Mason. My grandfather was a Mason. My father was a Mason. My two brothers were Masons, and my husband is dead, but he was a Mason. All right. Old man Garrison just took this Kentucky man and his wife and 4 children under old man Garrison was living in Kiel.
What's his first name?
Wait a minute. Old man Garrison. He was old. He's too old to farm. And we moved in his house on the farm.
What kind of house was it?
Okay, a frame house, 2-room frame house, and the old dugout home that the first man had been in the run and staked out that claim, and then when he got his deed, he later sold it to old man Garrison from Illinois. He'd come out from Illinois. And so I remember that little house, 2-room house, and the old dugout was still standing on the farm. And old man Garrison, so we lived there 1 year, and we went out to Blaine County, my father did, with a Methodist preacher, with the old Methodist preacher for the community, and went up to cantonment. Why don't you remove your coat? You must be hot. I felt before you came, that man will be warm. Just lay your coat on the bed.
Thank you.
So, then my father had accumulated some horses, and he built a, you ever see overjets on a wagon?
Overjet? No.
Overjets, they extended out over the wheel about that far.
About a
And
foot,
then,
2 feet?
huh?
About a foot or 2 feet over the wheel?
A fair
About a foot over the wheel?
Oh, more than that, I believe.
2 feet.
Well, maybe not 2 feet, but it had a dimension. And that, we could sleep up there at night. And we pulled out, at Eagle City, we left. They had a terrible storm.
Where's Eagle City?
How?
Where's Eagle City?
It's a little town on the Frisco Railroad before it was, when the railroad surveyed out, went through there and made a town.
Is that in Blaine County?
Blaine County. And it's there yet, too. The name Eagle City. Because I met a girl in Oklahoma, one here a few years ago, several years ago now, and she says, I taught school in Blaine County last winter. And, well, we left there, and went to Tulsa. And we rode through in a wagon with the overjets on it and slept in there. My father and mother and my baby brother was a little fella. He couldn't talk plain. And then my older brother was a year older than me. And we went to Tulsa and slept out at night in the month of October. And now, about 1900 just before 1903 came in. And we stayed at Tulsa. I saw the first pavement go on the streets of Tulsa.
1903.
Yes. And their high school was built. that was a history. And an old Indian, they said, but he was dead when we went there, had put a city block. Tulsa had been surveyed out. First Baptist Church had been founded, and a city block, and on the corner of 4th and Cincinnati, the First Baptist Church was there, and this block was bounded on the north by 4th Street, on the east by 4th Street, and on the west by 3rd Street, and on the south by what street was there? The Presbyterian Church was already there. The Presbyterians were early settlers in it. You ever hear Miss Alice Robertson?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I never saw her, but Henry Kendall College was named by her people and supported by Harry K. Thaw. You ever hear him?
No.
No. A man named White. He killed White because he was jealous of him, and White was guilty, and he was about to take Harry K. Thaw's wife away from him. And the Thaws were well-to-do people at that day and time, but they didn't have as much money as the Whites, and the courts dogged Harry K. Thaw for years and got money out of the Thaws. And then Miss Alice Robertson came in, and you remember when she was elected Oklahoma Congresswoman?
Mm-hmm.
How?
What year was that? When she was elected?
It was just a while before the First World War, before 1900, the First World War. And she fought secret voting for the soldiers in the First World War against Germany, Well, after the war, and she ran for governor, was elected congresswoman. Then, after the war, they wanted to grant the soldiers, while they were in the First World War, the privilege of voting, and voted by the ballots went through the mail. And they said, well, that was too uncertain, and Miss Alice Robertson voted against that, giving the soldiers the privilege of voting through the mail. And just as soon as she went to run for Congresswoman the second time, Miss Alice Robertson, and she voted against it. Then the soldiers, when she come up for re-election the next time, why, they had a banner that they floated on some of the streets in Oklahoma, and She failed, or they failed to get their secret ballots. She helped to kill that. She said it wasn't safe to send those ballots voted through the mail to the soldiers when they were army, when they were in the First World War. So this banner that they were floating on the streets, and they said it bore the name written in big letters and showed to the public. It says, "We love you, Miss Alice, but we can't vote for you." That's what the army said.
Mm-hmm.
See?
Was she defeated?
Oh yes, she was defeated.
Mm-hmm. What was Tulsa like at that time?
Oh, well, Tulsa was, during the First World War, they were paving streets, plenty of paving streets. The pavement only cost $500.
For how much paving? How long was it?
Oh, several streets.
Mm-hmm. Several blocks long?
Yes, yes.
When did you go to Lawton?
Huh?
When did you go to Lawton?
Well, we left Tulsa and went to Lawton for a while. Lawton had quite a backing. You heard me tell you that Miss Mattie Beale drew the second claim.
Mm-hmm.
You know how her claim was? There's a clause at that day and time, and I guess it's there yet, where 4 farms, 4 pieces, 160 acres each piece, made a square of 1 mile, didn't it? Mm-hmm. All right. When Lawton was laid out, the government had a mile square of land. They took, as I told you the other night, 1 mile, let's see, 2 quarter sections on the north side of that square and laid out for the town. Later, they sold, the government did this. They sold the 2 squares, the 2 farms, at public sales, and people bought them. The government kept the money and held the money and turned it over to the city to build their courthouse. So it was saved. Then the 2 south quarters, there they were. One the west end of the mile, and the other one the east end of the mile. Well, there was a law that people never thought much about. The public didn't know it, but it showed up in the government movement records that you could go to work and, can I use your piece of paper for just hold it in my hands? All right, here's your mile square. Here, the government had divided it.
In half.
How?
In half?
In half, the mile square. It was a mile each way. But they had divided the mile, and they sold these here lots off the 2 farms, 2 claims, and kept the money, turned it over to Lawton when Lawton got his name, and he'd had his name before that, and I guess must have, and they built their courthouse. Then the south half, you see, of the section was Mattie Beale, no, Woods a man named Woods drew the first claim. Well, the law that took people took their breath almost, give a man or a woman who was eligible for a claim the right to take these two south claims, go to work, and he was supposed to take one claim and file on it. And then that would have been Woods. Woods found a way to split that. Understand now? This here, the south half of Lawton was split in two, and Woods with his, that was a law. He was allowed, that must have been, I believe, the reason that the Congress had to pass on that, in the beginning. Mm-hmm. That they were allowed to split that half a section that was here, to split, but I'll say allowed to do that, for that might have been in a creek, huh? Might have been in the water. Now that might have been the excuse. I never heard that discussed. But Woods split this section, two farms. He split that then and took, because it was near against Lawton. See? He thought that he was getting the advantage, because the Frisco Railroad had already got its permission from the government to run the Frisco Railroad through there. So the trains were running right then, in the beginning. They soon got trains running. Also, that Mattie Beale had her choice of, I guess, going someplace else or take this. This half of a quarter. And her farm, her claim, was a mile long. Now, do you get that? Do you understand it? Yes, was a mile long and a half a mile, a quarter of a mile wide. Mm-hmm. And Woods thought he was in there next to the railroad, and he already had his because he got the first claim. But, wait a minute. Squaw Creek. Did you ever hear of Squaw Creek?
No, ma'am.
Squaw Creek's in Lawton yet. And it was down here a little ways. It took the entire, the edge of Mattie Beale. See, Mattie Beale was over here on the south of the Lawton. And she had, her claim was a mile long from east to west of Lawton. And a fourth of a mile wide. But wait a minute. Her Squaw Creek coming along down here on the edge of her land, just didn't hurt her so bad, but some. And then there was a bank and a hill that went up, a bluff. Well, that left her up here on the hill, which was to her advantage for residence. And I think after all was said and done, she beat Woods. Mm-hmm. Woods thought he did have the railroad. That is, the railroad paid for, of course. But her land, we lived in Lawton, and we were on Mattie Beale's land. Mm-hmm. You see, the law was, you could, in 16 months, I think it was 16 months, after you drew your claim, that was run in the draw now. Lawton was in the draw. Yeah. After that come in, Mattyville sold town lots, though you paid the government so much. The government gave the man who drew his claim the privilege, I think it was 16 months, of paying so much money, and the government gave him a deed. Well, you know, and Mattyville was a nice woman. She wasn't one of Oklahoma's, I could name them, some of those bad women. She was a nice woman. She worked for the telephone company in Kansas City before she ever come to Lawton, before she registered and drew a claim. So.
Excuse me.
How?
Did you know Geronimo down there?
Yes, sir. All right. I started to school in Lawton, and on 4th of July come along. There was no school, and the people were kind to the school kids and people, and they'd meet them on the street and business people. That morning was the 4th of July, and they said, you go to see Geronimo today. You see him. And so, I might mar that. I remember that morning, everybody was looking for Geronimo. Geronimo was, well, he was a taller and he was, I'm just almost 5 feet tall. I like a little, but Geronimo, I believe, was taller than me. And he passed me on the street. He was a government fugitive, and the government, my age is failing me, a government, same as government convict, you know.
The prisoner?
Prisoner, government prisoner. And he was kept in confinement up at Fort Sill all the time. Oh, and he come along the street and passed me, and I wasn't afraid because I knew he was guarded. The soldiers brought him down that day and turned him loose on the streets of Lawton and give him the freedom for the day. Well, old Geronimo was smart enough to know he'd be watched, and but he gave the soldiers the dodge before the day was over. So when the evening came and the sun began to set, or the hour came, that the soldiers must horseback take Geronimo back to Fort Sill and put him in his cage, and where he was locked up, and he was kept outdoors in a. They said I never saw where he was kept, but it was surrounded by barbed wire, and the bottom of it, or the part of it was low, so that he couldn't get out. He couldn't get up here and get over this barbed wire, and they looked for him to take him back to Fort Sill. That was it. Old Fort Sill. That was before new Fort Sill was built. Did you know Fort Sill been built twice?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, all right then. You know all about that. All right. They couldn't find Geronimo, but the soldiers didn't worry about that. They knew the trail he would take. So they just built him a campfire outside of Lawton down there. Well, they went down to Red River. That's where they went. The soldiers did, on their horses, and stayed there till morning. And when the sun come up the next morning, old Geronimo come crawling out of the sand hills on the banks of the Red River, rubbing his eyes. He'd slept all night after a long walk, and then they took Geronimo back to Fort Sill and put him in his cage up there. But they said if they'd turned him loose there, at the minute he got to the line of Mexico Mexico down there, the Mexicans would have killed him. Oh, they'd have killed him right now. Because the news would have traveled that Geronimo was loose, and the Mexicans would have killed him.
How come?
Huh?
How come?
Because he had killed so many Mexicans. You see, the Mexican territory were the enemy to the Indians. See? And the Indians fought with the Mexicans. The Mexicans fought with the Indians in the earliest days. And they said, well, the Mexicans would have killed old Geronimo, but he never got to cross Red River.
What was Geronimo like?
Huh?
What was Geronimo like?
Oh, now then, he was taller than I am. And when I saw him now, I can see that picture yet. He had, the government let him keep his scalps. You see, he had a great number, but they said most all of them, or maybe all of them, were Mexican scalps.
Yeah. Let me turn my tape over. You say they were mainly Mexican scalps?
They were Mexican skulls. And that string of skulls had been Indian fashion, had been cured up, and in the early days when he first killed the Mexicans, and they were put together, I'm sure, with buckskin, you know, buckskin ponies, dead ponies' skins, and made it and put on a string. And when he was on the streets of Lawton and I saw him, he had a string of skulls put together, one after another.
Were they skulls or scalps?
Skulls, human skulls, bones. And he had that string reached from the back of his head. Now, I didn't have time to see whether it was fastened to his neck, or I believe, though, there must have been fastened. That string of skulls reached from there, we'll see the back of his neck, to his heels, to his feet. But they'd move. Of course, they were fastened to his neck. And the government let him keep them. They didn't care. And they reached to his feet. And he went on and listened. He was alert. I remember just as well when he stepped off of the sidewalk in Lawton, when he passed me and stepped off of the sidewalk and went across the street. Why, he was as alert as you would be. He looked this way if there was any traffic coming, or looked that way for traffic, and went on. And he could walk now. But you see, that's been many years ago.
Did you talk to him?
No. I never said nothing. In fact, I'm sure I couldn't understood what he'd said, and I wasn't interested in what he's going to say. I was a kid. And
what year was that?
well, it was way before statehood.
What did you do on statehood day?
What did we do?
Yes.
Well, I stayed home. I was a kid, young yet, and I know what some of the people did.
What'd they do?
You ever hear the Wigwam Saloon in Lawton?
The Wigwam Saloon?
Yes.
No.
Ed Harlan. Harlan was his name, was Harlan. From Harlan County, Kentucky. Came out to Oklahoma Territory when Lawton was opened up, and bought one of those lots in the business part of Tulsa, of Lawton, and built a brick building, and opened up the Wigwam Saloon. Oh, it was a palace in those days. Looked nice. And I never was in it till after Oklahoma went dry. But when Oklahoma went, and he built this Wigwam Saloon and opened up a big saloon and was running the saloon, but did you know Oklahoma come in dry?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. When the 12 o'clock night came, Oklahoma went dry, statehood, and went into statehood. It also went dry. And Ed Harlan was so bullheaded, they said he went in the back part of that big saloon of his and drank some of all the liquor he had. He lived 3 days and died. He just lived 3 days. He went home, left his saloon, went home that night in Lawton, and went to bed, and then they said he lived 3 days. Now, whether he lived the full 3 days out or not, I don't know. But the liquor killed him. He died. Well, the property was his. His widow rented that property out, and there was a candy kitchen went in there. And I have gone in that place, I can remember, and built and bought candy.
Mm-hmm.
Bought candy.
Is it still in Lawton?
How?
Is that building still there?
Well, I'm sure it is. And although it's been sold and resold, because his widow's been dead for years.
Did they have a big party there before statehood? The night of statehood? At the Wigwam Saloon?
No, didn't have no party. He was trying to drink it all before he died. And he went home and died.
So what happened in Lawton on statehood day? Any big parties or celebrations?
Oh, yes. The good women of the town went out the day they voted on statehood, and they voted on the liquor traffic, and they voted it out. And the women went and walked the streets of Lawton. They said, of course I was at home, walked the streets of Lawton and begged men to vote Oklahoma dry. And they did. And Oklahoma came in dry. But after a while, the liquor traffic, got another hearing, and then they opened saloons again. But it had been so corrupt in places. Now, all right, where's your paper again? All right, here was Lawton. From the north, coming down and running clear across Oklahoma, clear across that part of, and Lawton, it went into Texas. And that was the Rock Island Railroad's line through there. Of course, they dealt with the government. And that was before statehood. And you see, as a territory, it come in, the government had issued a government license to sell liquor. And it was so corrupt that you couldn't find words, I suppose, to manage it, to explain it. And the liquor people and the bad people, the harlots, everything, they chose the land here on the east side of Lawton, in Lawton, for their business, most of their business. And an old woman, a couple that had one little boy, and a little fellow several years old, yes. And an old man in their family come with them to Lawton, Oklahoma. And that was territory days. And this woman in her little town in, I think it was Illinois, they were from. She had always went in their nice little town in Illinois, gone to the theater in the afternoon. That took the place way back there of the picture show, you see. She said, well, she was going to the theater in the afternoon, and her little boy and this old man in their family went with her. And they went down there, and they went up here in this bad part of town. They had only been there a few days, and her husband was in business, or looking out of business, and they hadn't got acquainted with Tulsa, with Lawton, and didn't know how corrupt, how rotten it was. And so she was with the Monarch. You ever hear the Monarch Theater?
No, ma'am.
The Monarch Theater in Lawton was one of the most corrupt places that you ever heard tell of.
What'd they do there?
All right. That there was a corrupt show. Nobody would venture in there that was civilized.
What kind of shows they had?
Women and men, human beings. And it was in the daytime too. Oh, it run day and night. But in that daytime, she went to the Monarch Theater, and she took her little boy, and she took the old man with her, and she bought her ticket here. And the fellow sold her a ticket. He shouldn't have sold it to her because it was imposing on her because she didn't know where she was going. But anyhow, she got her ticket. Then she went up here to hand in her ticket before she got in the theater. And the man there, the second man, said, oh, lady, you don't want to go in here. And she was astonished. She said, why, yes. She said, I have my ticket. He said, yes, you have it, but this is lovely. Finally, it soaked in. Now, you can imagine that a person had come all the way from Illinois out here, and her husband hadn't told her yet. He was in the better part of Tulsa, or Lawton, looking out his business, trying to find business, and didn't tell his wife that she couldn't go to the theater here in Lawton like she did back in Illinois. And so this young man, last man, took her ticket, I guess, and they're let her keep it, and maybe they'll let her keep it, and told her, says, you can't come in here at all. And so, because he could see as far as he could see her coming in that part of Tulsa, Lawton, and that she had no business in there, and well, she'd have gone home and told her husband, you know, when she got in there, she was in one of the worst places in the world. Well, she turned and went back and went in over in the better part of Lawton. But the time changes. It was after statehood, the man, now what was the name I heard, that owned the Monarch Theater, he slept in the daytime. Of course, he was up into deviltry all night long and running his bad place and business. And so he was asleep in the daytime. And one of the devils that worked for him got in for him and set the place on fire. Well, when he waked up, he saw the flames. He knew where to put it, the devil did, where to set the fire. And he, this man that owned it, I used to hear his name, wrapped the bed quilts, blankets around himself, and rolled down the stairs that was burning. But he died. He didn't live through it. He was able to talk, but his body, he died. And the good women of town, see them there harlots, all were living in that there building, and they got to sleep in the daytime, I guess. But the good women of the town got in their carriages. It was carriage day, carriages, horse and buggy days, you know, and drove down there after the fire was put out. And those here bad women stand around half clothed. They'd escaped the fire. They didn't all die. I don't know whether any of the women died of the fire. The fire was aimed at this man who owned it, you see. His devils that worked for him fixed it so it burned him when they did. And these good women took those bad women, went up to them. They was on the street down there, and around near the Rock Island Depot, and asked them to come and get in their carriage, and took them home. You see, the fire, they didn't have time to get their clothes. They were half dressed, and they were the worst human beings that could walk the streets or anything. So that put us into the Monarch Theater. The bad, but it recuperated, and of course when that man died, why, he must have been formed a company, you know, of them, and they still had, well, some business or some. Business of some kind down in there, and he was dead and buried.
What did you do during World War One?
Huh?
What did you do during World War One?
I was sick.
You were sick. The flu epidemic?
Yes, flu epidemic came in, and Lawton, no, we had left there and gone to Tulsa. And we were in Tulsa, and they had my parents bought and built a home in Tulsa near Central Park. Have you been to Tulsa?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, you know where Central Park is?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. You know, it's got a history. It had, in the beginning, an old Indian gave Central Park, my mother's father's property was across the street from Central Park, east, right east, and there's where we lived. And there was about 2 years in there that I had this throat trouble. So that was before, way before, that's when it was set aside. The old Indian gave the land of Central Park. It was his. The government had given it to him, an old Creek Indian, and he had given it to the city of Tulsa. Now, I must leave Lawton out. The city of Tulsa, and built and set aside for a park.
What was the Indian's name?
Huh?
What was the Indian's name?
Oh, I don't know. That's way before my time. You see, Tulsa got its first post office in 1868, because I called the Tulsa Daily World office one day and asked them how old Tulsa was, and it got its first post office in 1868. Well, way back there. That's the year my mother was born. So, she's over 100 years old, she's living. The Central Park just stood there. And people went there go there and meet and have singings and things. And finally, Tulsa wanted a building that belonged to the city, and they wanted to build one and have, wait a minute, what am I trying to find words to tell you? They would have, and build a building. So they said, oh well, we'll just take that off of Tulsa's hands, and we'll just we'll build that building for a convention. They wanted to call it Convention Hall, which they built later somewhere else. And they built this here building, or wanted to build it in Central Park. All right, they had to have it transferred from the gift of the old Indian who was dead to build the Central Park Convention Hall, we call it. And when they went to look at the record, the old Indian was smarter than thus he'd be, or had been. He just wrote in his deed to the city of Tulsa. It was incorporated. Tulsa was incorporated. The note that it was to remain, never be changed. It was to be for a public park for Lawton. No, for Tulsa, I mean. And they had to stop. Well, they went to work then, and over on they built Convention Hall. The city of Tulsa built some land, bought some land from private ownership, and built Convention Hall to have public meetings that belonged to the city. Then later they bought from the railroad company some land that the railroad company didn't need on the better part and cleaner part of town. You didn't have to wade through the mire of bad people to get there. Neither. It was on the east side, but it was belonged to the Midland Valley Railroad. The Midland Valley Railroad had some extra land that they didn't need, and they sold it to the city to build Convention Hall. But they got gypped when they built Convention Hall. I've been there to meetings. They had the fire department wasn't shrewd enough to catch up with them and have the city and have the land, have the building. So that was Convention Hall. Yes. Contract to look into it and accepted the building, and lightning struck it and burnt that building down, but it never was rebuilt. And the new building I never was in. That's been in later years, and in the new part of Tulsa.
Where was the Convention Hall? What part of Tulsa was that in, the Convention Hall?
The last one, the one that burnt down. That's something I've carried all my life, is a chronic throat trouble. And it shows up about once a year.
Yeah.
Oh, it was what part of town?
What part of town was the Convention Hall in, the one that burned down?
Now, you see, in later years, our mind is not as good as it was when I saw Geronimo. Oh, wait a minute. Lightning struck it, and it wasn't protected by lightning.
Rods.
You know what I mean.
Lightning rods?
No, lightning rods your foot. The walls inside. When the building burned, it burst. The walls bursted, bursted through. No. Let me see what.
Well, what did you do during World War I in Tulsa?
I was sick for about over a year, and my parents sent me to California. No, Colorado. To some friends.
What part of Colorado?
Grand Junction.
Okay.
You know where Grand Junction
Yes,
is?
ma'am.
Were you ever at Glenwood Springs?
No, ma'am.
All right, Glenwood Springs has been taken over by the government, you know, and been a soldier home, and there's where hot water comes up out of the ground.
Yeah. Okay. How long did you stay there?
Well, I went out there in the winter, and I stayed there till the next October. And
What year? 1917? 18?
well, I've almost forgotten the year. It
What?
was after the war.
Oh, well, the war ended in 1918.
Yes, the war ended in 1918.
What did you do on Armistice Day?
Huh?
What did you do on Armistice Day when the war ended?
Oh,
November 11th, 1918. What did you do?
oh, I had gone back home on and wasn't doing anything. And then I went to I went to San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah, was there a big celebration in Tulsa for Armistice Day?
Oh, yes, yes. And my mother almost shouted because her youngest son was 18 years old the next day. And the government, the war took him. And mother was, and her son-in-law didn't have to go because he and my sister had 4 children in 5 years. And that was about the limit. And they, yes, I've just had a shot, 10 shots of penicillin.
Penicillin.
That Dr. Herndon, have you met him?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, he prescribed them, and the nurses gave them to me. But I recuperated after that, and I went to Kentucky and visited with these cousins of mine. And I went to nursing. By the way, you're to keep this record. I don't want to see it in print.
Oh, no, it won't
Well,
be printed.
And these cousins of mine have grown up. They were all younger than me and married. And so I would go back on visits. I'd go back on visits, visit these cousins of mine in Kentucky. And I said, I went one time too many. Married. Well, I went on my husband had the River Bottom farm, and he had the River Bottom farm and farmed. Oh, high River Bottom. Our farm went to the river. And I started raising chickens, and I'd order baby chicks. Did you ever hear Gostley's government inspected chickens?
No, ma'am.
And I would order 1,000 at a time. And my husband built me a chicken house. And I raised the baby chicks in there. That house was, I bought day-old baby chicks, and I paid over 50 cents a piece, a few cents over 50. 50 cents a piece for costliness. They were bought. I ordered them from Minnesota, and they were shipped down there to Fort Knox. You ever been in Fort Knox,
Yes, ma'am.
Kentucky?
Mm-hmm.
All right. They were shipped down there by express. Fort Knox, Kentucky. And my husband would go to the place and get them, the baby chicks. And I raised them. And then when they were a certain age, we'd turn them out on the range. And they were raised on the range. And, you know, they'd mow my voice. And in the evening, I'd go out, open the doors, both ends of that big building. My building was 18 feet wide and 50 feet long. And put my baby chicks in there. And I had electric brooders.
What year was this?
Oh, you're getting close to me now. You see, I didn't marry till I was past 40 years old. I was just past 40. I had gone to school somewhere in Kentucky,
Where at in Kentucky? Where'd you go to school?
Mead County,
Mm-hmm.
with well, I'd seen my husband before we ever left Kentucky. I was old enough to go to school, just old enough to go to school, sure, when I went to Oklahoma. No, I didn't marry till I was past 40 years old.
What was your husband's name?
King, K-I-N-G,
What was his first name?
Alexander. He's buried there in Mead County
When did you come back to Oklahoma?
after he died.
When did he die?
1900 and April. Maybe it was the second day of April. I don't know. I've forgotten that. Now, which day was it?
What year was it?
I know my cousin came wake me up. He died in the hospital. He had a stroke. He died in the hospital in Louisville, and she came wake me up and told me that they had called her and told her I was asleep in her house. I'd gone to her house to stay at night because I was afraid to stay alone.
Yeah. You
And
remember what year that was?
well, my husband had been dead 9 years.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, where'd you have your chicken farm? What part of Kentucky was it in?
They're in Mead County.
What's the name of the town?
The town's gone.
What was the name of it?
Wolf Creek. That was the post office. Just a post office.
And you
One street. But Brandenburg. That penicillin sure does get you, leaves you. Leaves you pretty well torn up.
Mm-hmm.
I've had 10 shots.
Yeah.
The records will show. No, I was cheated out of raising a family because it was too hard on me. I was past 40 years old when I married. But there was after I went back to Kentucky and married, before married, you see, this is what I did. Now this sounds like boasting, but I'm not. Before I married, I got into Dallas Hospital. I got into the hospital and took training. I was pretty old to go in training, but I went in. And the doctor told me that I had that chronic throat trouble and it would show up on me every little bit. And the doctor said, you know where Baylor Hospital is in Dallas?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I was right there. And the doctor said I'd have to give it up. So the thing I did, in Tulsa, had a dear old friend. She was a state registered nurse, Oklahoma. And she says, I'll tell you what you do. I'd get better. There was some chronic throat troubles. I've had this chronic throat trouble ever since we lived in Lawton when I was young. But there never was any TB showed up. But anyway, this old nurse, state registered, she says, tell you what you do. She says, you go to work and go to the nurses registry and you register as a student nurse. Don't register as a practical nurse. You register as a student nurse. Then you're a higher up. You're above the servants class. I served 1 year. You ever in Memphis, Tennessee?
No, ma'am.
All right. Now understand, sir, this is not to go on record because I don't want to use their names. 1 year, I was in Louisville, Kentucky. I worked for a doctor in his home. You see, nursing their baby when it came home from the hospital.
What was the doctor's name?
Chris. J. No. Wait a minute. Dr. Owsley Grant. He's dead now. Grant, his father was a doctor, Dr. Grant, head of him. They didn't want an old practical nurse in their home. So I was registered, and their nurse, they had brought their baby home, and their wife and his wife from the hospital, the Baptist Hospital in Louisville, Kentucky. And I stayed there about a year. And I left there. The next thing, did you ever hear Dr. Cryle, that garter specialist?
No, ma'am.
Well, his daughter in Cleveland, Ohio, had married his daughter in Cleveland. She'd married a young doctor down in Memphis, Tennessee. And I got recommended there. And I stayed there about a year. Then I went, rested up a while, and I made 2 trips to New York. You see, if you could get in, I was above the servant class. Also, the mother, you see, I lived in the home. I wasn't in the hospital. I wasn't a hospital nurse because I wasn't capable, you see. And Dr. Owsley Grant was home, left there. I made 2 different trips to New York I spent one summer on Long Island. These were, and with a baby. Then I spent another summer. Do you know where Buffalo is? Of course. I took a baby to Buffalo, New York. No, Olean. Do you know where Olean, New York is?
No, ma'am.
No, that's 85 miles down in the state, south of Buffalo. And I took another vacation. And then later, I spent a summer on in the Adirondack Hills up there, at Olean, New York. Then I took another long vacation.
What was nurses training like?
Why, it's one of the, what was it like?
I mean, what did you study?
Oh, we had a curriculum. They had, physiology and I've forgotten the title. Listen, I brought some of my books here with me. Thought, well, I'd keep them for reference books, just to look at. And they've been stolen. Right here. These here nigger men, I know what he did. They stole, and they were taken here, and he furnished his friends. I know that's where he disposed of the books that I brought right here to Lackey Manor with me 8 years ago. And these here aids, some of these aids here, the black ones, that's all, they were black ones, used my books. I believe they did. And then, medical nursing, bedside nursing, and all that, you see.
Where'd you go to school, nurses training?
I told you a while ago, Dallas.
Dallas?
Baylor Hospital in Dallas, Texas.
Who was your instructors down there?
Helen D. Holliday. She was a Johns Hopkins nurse. She was principal of the, and then she went to Columbia University, New York City, and then she went to come to Baylor, and she was the principal of the training school at Baylor Hospital for 11 years.
What year were you in training down there?
Well, I was past 30.
Yeah.
I was past 30 years old when I went in training. But wait a minute, my Tulsa nurse had instructed me all along the way what to do and to hold myself above the servant class. Hear me? And I'd take long vacations. But wait a minute. In 1900 and, I forgot it now, old Dr. Charlie Mayo was living. I thought, well, I'm going to try back there, the training. The times were dull in Tulsa. So I just boarded a Greyhound bus and I went up to Rochester, Minnesota. I'm sure you know where that is. Were you ever at the Mayo Clinic?
I've been there, yes.
Well, I wasn't in the clinic, only to the YWCA secretary's office. The Mayo Clinic kept, at that time, I don't know what they have now, for years, the Mayo Clinic had a desk, you call it, with a YWCA, you know where that is, and what that is, a secretary there all the time to take care of YWCA work in Kansas, in Rochester, at the Mayo Clinic. And then, so I went to the YWCA secretary there, went to her desk, and gave her my history. And when she found out the experience I'd had in doctors' homes, you see, I'd select doctors' homes and managed to get in through the YWCA. And so I had, and Mayos, young Dr. Charles Mayo.
Did you know him?
Huh?
Do you know Dr. Mayo?
I certainly did when I lived in his home for all that time, and he and Mrs. Mayo went on a West India cruise. They had 2 babies, none of them was coming, so they were, after Christmas next year, they left on their West India cruise, and he took his first assistant with him on the company, young Dr. Charles. Old Dr. Charles Mayo has been dead, I don't know. He was there, I've been in his home many a time.
What was he like, Dr. Mayo?
Oh, just so reserved, just so plain, so comfortable you'd be surprised. Well, they wanted somebody that they could depend on. Then, and after Christmas, they left me with 3 babies then. The 3rd one had been born. I carried that 3rd baby home from the hospital in Rochester, Minnesota, in my arms. And doctor come, he lived 3 miles out, and I lived in the home. I wasn't in the clinic, had nothing to do with that. And they left them babies home with me, a little girl 3, a little boy 2, and then the baby that was coming a year old was when I left. And he left them with me. But did you know that old Dr. Charlie Mayo's wife was the first nurse Rochester ever had? Huh?
No, I didn't know that.
Her daughter-in-law told me all about it.
Yeah.
That wait, before she married Dr. Mayo, old Dr. Charlie Mayo, and they had 7 children. Did you know that they had a feeble-minded daughter?
No.
Huh?
No.
You didn't? The scarlet fever epidemic caught their 3 babies, their 3 children, and Dorothy Mayo, they'd send her away to school. You've heard of this school? Statement from me. Mr. Donaldson did. And wanted
Who's
to put
Mr. Donaldson?
right here, yes, yes.
Oh.
He wanted this to put it in the paper, and that it was a boost that I was home here, making my home and taking up residence, which I have. He had a lackey manner. So and I wouldn't agree to it. I said, no, advertising the Mayos, I wouldn't do it. I said, no, I didn't want to. And my kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, but anyway. And they were gone, the Mayos, young Mrs. Mayo, Alice Mayo. Did you ever hear Alice Mayo?
No, I'm not familiar with him.
She is, or was, old Dr. Charlie Mayo's daughter-in-law. She married his son. She was a Philadelphia girl. Did you know that young Dr. Mayo, he's dead now. They found him at the bottom of a hill, driving. He'd been driving home at night from the Mayo Clinic, and they found him with his car turned over, and they think he went to sleep, driving home, 3 miles out from Rochester. And that was the son, and we found him dead. Did he do, Joe Mayo? Joe Mayo went hunting. He was the other son. Went hunting at night, and he figured he went to sleep because he'd run off on a side railing of a railroad track, and a freight train come along and knocked his car off the track and killed him and killed his dog. And he'd been hunting at night. You see, they were outdoor people, the Mayos were.
Did you know old Dr. Mayo?
Not the first one. The first one, came from Illinois. I knew the second one. I knew the second Mayo. Yes, sir. Dr. Mayo. I knew him. Should I say I did?
May 12, 1983. This is Joe Todd, an interview with Cora Lee King. Follow-up interview.
I was a Chisholm.
You were Chisholm?
I'm a Chisholm.
Are you related to Narcissus Chisholm?
How?
Are you related to Narcissus and Jesse Chisholm?
No. Unless they're Kentuckians.
I'm not sure. Now, what's the Indian's name that you knew? You said Basinger?
Basinger.
Who was he?
Old man Edgar Basinger came out to the Indian Territory with a large family. I'm sure he had a large family. In 100 years ago, I know, 100. And he stayed. Others that came out to the Indian country left and come back or went someplace else.
Where did he come from?
Huh?
Where did he come from?
I'm from Kentucky.
Where did Basinger come from? Edgar Basinger.
Mead County, Kentucky.
Is that where he came from too?
Yes, sir. And some of his people intermarried with my family.
Where'd you settle when you came to Indian Territory?
Tulsa. And he came to our house and stayed all night. Way over 50 years ago. Old man Edgar Basinger.
What was he like? What was he like, Edgar Basinger? What did he look like?
Oh, I don't remember. You see, I was a girl 12 years old.
Is that when you came to, what year was that when you came to Oklahoma?
When who came?
When you came, what year was that?
1901.
What did Tulsa look like in 1901?
I saw the first pavement go on the streets, brick pavement, and the old Central High School was being built.
Mm-hmm. How big was Tulsa at that time?
Well, I believe it was 6 or 7. 100 or more.
Did you say that you saw Geronimo?
Oh, yes. After that, I saw Geronimo.
Did you move to Lawton?
Huh?
Did you move to Lawton?
Yes. We went down there and stayed a while, and then came back to Tulsa.
When did you see Geronimo?
On the streets of Tulsa, of the 4th of July.
Tulsa or Lawton?
How?
In Tulsa or Lawton?
Lawton.
Yeah. What did he look like?
He was a short Indian. And I don't know, he had something on his head. I don't remember now what it was. But they went out and told all the young people, or told us that they saw us, that they, on the streets, that we would see Geronimo. And he passed me, and he can step now. And the soldiers brought him down. He was a prisoner of war from Fort Sill, and they took him down to, just turned him loose in Lawton. The soldiers were horseback, and the soldiers watched him, and of course, and but he slipped away from them. He thought he did, and he went down to Red River, and the next morning, and they missed him when the soldiers went to round him up to take him back to Fort Sill and put him in his den. They couldn't find him, and they didn't care, because they was horseback, and they knew his traits and his maneuvers and everything. And the next, they went down to Red River line and camped overnight. And the next morning, they said the soldiers saw him come out of the sand hills in the Red River hills, and rubbing his eyes. He got a good night's sleep after reconnoitering all day on the 4th of July. And of course they loaded him on one of their horses and took him back to Fort Sill.
How was he dressed?
Well, now you see, I'm 95 years old, and he had moccasins on, I suppose, and he must have had a hat on.
Did you say he had scalps on his clothes?
Had what?
Did you say he had scalps on his clothes?
On a string. They were on a string, and they were fastened up back of his head here. But he passed me, and I was behind him then, and and that string of scalps reached down to his heels, if I remember right, about his heels. And now he was stepping, and then he evaded the soldiers and wanted to, but the next morning he come out of the sand hills down there on Red River, and he was headed for Mexico. As they said, though, the people said he wouldn't have lasted long in Mexico. The Mexicans, he had killed so many Mexicans, you know. Geronimo had. And Geronimo was taken right back and put in his den. And I heard, now I never saw that place, where he was in
a cell?
Huh?
In a cell?
Outdoors.
Yeah.
And there was a wire cage around him. It made a wire cage around him. Barbed wire. I don't know how
When
long.
did you move to Lawton?
Well, I don't remember.
Um,
You see, we landed in Oklahoma Territory at Dover by train
yeah.
in 1901. And let's see, who was governor then? It's before statehood, you
Yeah.
know. That's way before statehood.
Do you remember Statehood Day?
Oh, yes. Well, I remember by, wait a minute, now let me get his name. He was saloon keeper, Ed Harlan. Ed Harlan come out from Harlan County, Kentucky. And before we did, he come in territorial days. And he had the Wigwam Saloon.
Where at?
Huh?
Where was that?
In Lawton, and it was a brick building and a wigwam saloon. He run it, and when Oklahoma went statehood, she went dry with statehood, you know. You know that? Oklahoma went dry. And that night, when he had to close his saloon, of course, he lost his liquor license, they said, and he went back there in his reserve stock and drank ever so much of his best liquor. He lived 3 days and died. That was Ed Harlan.
What was Statehood Day like in Lawton? Were there big celebrations?
How's that?
Was there a big celebration in Lawton on Statehood Day?
Well, the town went wild. Oh yes, the whole town went wild because they was granted statehood, and Ed Harlan went wild when he tried to drink all of his whiskey and his liquor, and I think it was 3 days he died.
Do you remember the first funeral you went to?
Wait a minute. Yes, my grandmother,
What was the funeral like? How was it held?
in the country funeral, and had, I don't remember about the preaching service, and I know my father, it was my mother's mother that was dead, and she was buried there. They had, my father got me hold of me. I was 4 years old when she died, and they said, and he said, that's Grandma now, that's Grandma. And I tried, a lump come up in my throat and almost choked me. Almost choked me because that was Grandma, but I didn't cry. I choked it back. I was trying to be a brave kid. And
Who made the coffin?
how?
Who made the coffin?
Who made what?
Who made the coffin for your grandmother?
They went across the river. Some men, I'm sure they did, but I didn't remember. And in Leavenworth, Indiana, see, we lived on the Ohio River bank in Mead County, and went across there and bought the, I'm sure that's where they bought the casket. It was a factory-made casket.
Was it wood?
Oh, yes, yes.
How did you come to Oklahoma? By wagon or by train?
We left there at 1 o'clock in the morning on a steamboat to Tell City. I was told later, Tell City. And we traveled till morning, and all the next day on the steamboat to Tell City to Evansville, Indiana. And we got off of the train, and yes, and they came around and told us we didn't have to leave the steamboat. Of course, it was comfortable and nice. And we stayed there till towards 1 o'clock, and we walked from the Ohio River bank up in Evansville, Indiana, to that train, the railroad station. And I was so small for my age. The agent at Evansville, the depot agent, didn't charge. Says, well, my father bought tickets for my brother a half ticket for him, and he looked at me, and I'd gone to sleep, and I was curled up in that little depot, asleep, and he said, well, she can go for nothing. A 12-year-old girl traveling on the train for nothing, because I was so small for my age. And then we took the train about 1 o'clock for St. Louis. And from St. Louis, we got into St. Louis the next morning about 9 o'clock. Yes, we did. At about 9 o'clock, so Mother said. And then we was on the train all day. And we got into Kansas City. We went from St. Louis to Kansas City. And then we was on the train till morning, and all day in northern part of Oklahoma, up there in Grant County, and we crossed Kansas, of course, and come into what people called old Oklahoma, and come down and got off the train at Dover. If you're following me now, got off the train at Dover, and we stayed in the Dover hotel 3 days.
What was that hotel like?
Well, they served meals family style, and the man and his wife that owned the hotel, they rented the building at Dover. They served family-style meals. And the family, mother and we children, stayed in Dover till Sunday. And this was on Friday that we got off the train there. And Saturday, though, between Friday and Sunday, on Saturday, we went to, my father hired a livery buggy and a driver. No, I think they went over in Kingfisher County to a man that he knew and mother knew, who was born and reared in Mead County. And then we drove back that day on Sunday. He drove back. And on Monday, wait a minute. He crossed the Cimarron River, to,
Mrs. King,
yes,
you remember?
Governor Jenkins, I believe, was governor of Oklahoma when we went there in 1901, and we signed it. And we were Kiel, Oklahoma. That town was called Kiel. It was named Kiel in Kingfisher County territory, Oklahoma territory, and McKinley was president. It was after the Spanish-American War, you see, and he was president. And let's see now, McKinley, he was president, and that fall in October, they had a memorial funeral after the assassination of President McKinley. Zalgaz was, he was an Italian. A band of them had banded together and vowed for the death course, that's was expected. And he drew the numbers, Zagaz, and killed, shot the president as he spoke, or just spoke, in Buffalo, New York. And I remember that well. And there was and McKinley was, I used to know the vice president, but that,
Theodore Roosevelt. Yeah.
yes.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Yes, Teddy Roosevelt. Oh, sure. I was thinking about the one before him.
That's McKinley.
Oh, no. The vice president before Teddy Roosevelt, but that came in. Well, but I've forgotten his name. I know, but the state of Oklahoma, the community was just beside itself too. Bert Welty and Ben Cravens had just killed the postmaster at Red Rock, Oklahoma, and his parents, that helped, it killed, wait a minute, killed, I don't know his name, and at Red Rock, Oklahoma, and the post office, he was postmaster. They killed the postmaster and robbed the post office, but, see, it's about to get away from me. Bert Welty, his parents had a farm. They were in the run before that, 9 years before that, and got a, let's see, I'll think of it in a minute, it'll come to me. And got that. And Ben Cravens got away and never was caught. Never was caught. But Bert Welty was young yet and green, and he lost one eye. They shot one eye. The officers shot one eye out for him. But you see, that community knew him, Bert Welty, well, and knew his parents, and knew his sister. She went to school there in Kiel. Well, go on. That remained Kiel, the town did, until the First World War. And these two old German men, old man Whalen, and old man Yorkie, had named the town Kiel for Kiel, Germany. And it remained that way until the First World War. And these two old German men were living yet, and born and reared in Germany. And they had families there in Oklahoma. So they petitioned, wrote their petition, to the Postal Department and asked for, to change the name. They said they were American citizens and they were loyal. And today, that's Loyal, Oklahoma, instead of Kiel. And that's the history of Kiel, and it's there yet. It's Loyal now. And yes, I've lived in Oklahoma from 1901 but to the present day.
When did you first go to Tulsa?
About 1906, I think. We went out. My father didn't draw. You see, he come out here expecting to draw a piece of land, you know. Draw. And he didn't get anything. His piece of paper, check, was blank, or that is, the land was all gone before they got to him. Oh, there was so many hundred people come out and entered the draw, you know.
Was that in El Reno or Lawton?
Oh, El Reno.
El Reno.
El Reno, because Lawton come in, Lawton was in, the draw took place at, they registered at Oklahoma City and at Lawton. Wait a minute. They read, El Reno. I was getting my wires crossed. At El Reno. And Lawton was a tent town when they when the people went into Lawton, it was a tent town. And I wondering if there's anything I could add to that. Any truth, of course. Let me see. In October, they had, buried McKinley, and in October, they had the memorial funeral in the schoolhouse. Of course, that old schoolhouse is gone now, in Kiel, Oklahoma.
Who gave the service?
Huh?
Who gave the service?
The school.
Who was in charge of it?
I didn't know the preacher.
Yeah.
But, no.
Do you remember the Spanish-American War?
Yes, I do.
Tell me about it.
Spanish-American War. My father's youngest brother had joined before the Spanish-American War, he had joined the Army. And was in the Army. And he started, let's see, he was in Cuba, and he was a country boy, my father's brother, and he made a career of it.
What was his name?
Judd, J-U-D, Judd. Judd. There was a D in his name. D. Dyer.
Dyer?
Judd D. Dyer Chisholm.
Do you remember watching the soldiers go to war or coming back home?
No. Which one?
Spanish-American War.
Oh, no. I was in Kentucky yet.
Yeah.
I was in Kentucky when that happened.
Okay.
And, see, but I grew up, and
What kind of work did your father do?
boatsman, a flatboat, boated lime. He bought lime kilns and loaded the lime and took to as far as New Orleans, and they went there, and he went out and sold his lime in the early days, sold his lime to sugar plantation, raisers, sugar plantations,
What kind of work did he do in Oklahoma?
farmed.
Farm?
He leased Indian land. He leased some Indian land at Oak. We took some time off from the towns that he first went to, and he went to, oh, now wait, let me think that. Raised wheat. We raised wheat. Indian land.
Where did he lease the farm?
Eagle. We lived in Eagle City. That was our post office. This is the post office today. And now what is, oh, the cantonment. Cantonment's where he leased it from the Indians. Big Head's land. Dave Big Head. And he and his wife come out there, and they had the sweetest little black Indian baby. And I remember at that day and time, they had a wagon, and the team, Dave Big Head did, and his wife, a young squaw. She was young, but they had a baby, a little thing in her arms. It wasn't a year old near. And she sat flat in the wagon. She didn't have spring seat. She sat squaw-like. She sat flat on the bed of the wagon. And he stood up. They didn't have no spring seat. But my father did. He bought a wagon and team, you know.
What was Dave Big Head like?
Tall, slender.
What tribe was he?
Must have been Cheyenne, because they're all Cheyenne Indians up there, or used to be. Mm-hmm. And their land was allotted to them. It was, there's history to that. Dave Big Head and there's history. Wait a minute, I'll get it. It was, and there's a lot of them camped over Indians. They camped on the South Canadian River. No, North Canadian. Eagle City is right close to the Canadian River out there in, what's the name of that county? Eagle City is in Comanche County. Wait a minute, no. Eagle City, Lawton's in Comanche County. That's it. Lawton's in Comanche County. I'm about to run out of news. But after I grew up, we went to Tulsa. We left Eagle City and went straight through to Tulsa. Mm-hmm. And it was Lindsay's. That the house was Lila D. Lindsay.
Is that in Tulsa?
Yes.
Your first house?
Where the house we lived. We built the house, a one-roomed house in Dave Big Head's land in Eagle City. On the Dave Big Head's quarter of land, his that had been allotted to him. And I go, his wife had, his squaw had a, but I don't know where her land was. They were married like white people. And, but after I grew up in Tulsa there, I would go back, you see. I could travel. I started traveling when I was a 12-year-old girl.
How come you moved to Tulsa?
Oh, we didn't like it in the West. Too stormy. The storms. I've sat up at night. Was afraid to lie down. The storms at night. And we went to, I went to Tulsa. No, back to Mead County to visit cousins, you see. Visit cousins.
So you moved to Tulsa because it was too stormy in the west?
Yes, and we went there, and as I said, and I made more than, I don't know how many trips I made going from Tulsa, going on a visit these cousins. And of course I remembered them well. I'd gone to school with some of them.
Well,
and I said, well, I'd made one trip too many. I married there, stayed there. And I sold that farm. My husband died. And I sold the farm. We had no children, and I couldn't live there on that farm of myself.
do you have any old photographs?
No, and I give away the newer ones. My eyes are so bad I couldn't see them. I can't see, and I gave them away. The photographs, they gave them back, gave them to the relatives, gave them to his relatives, my husband's relatives. And so I didn't, my sister in California, she grew up, she was 7 years younger than me, but in the time she grew up and went to California, and since the Second World War, I had a nephew, her son, out there in Long Beach, California. He's an engineer, government engineer, finished here at Stillwater School, and they wanted me to come out there, and I went out there, and of course I didn't want to stay in California. I didn't care anything about California.
Do you remember the Depression of 1907?
Well, I'm sure I do remember. I can't figure out anything great event that happened then.
Can you tell me what kind of chores you did on the farm as a child?
Oh, I milked a cow.
Did you do the laundry?
I helped, rubbed on the board.
You make your own soap?
No, Mother made it.
How'd she make it?
She bought cans of lye. Oh, when I was a child, before we left Kentucky, he made a hopper. My father did. Took planks, boards, and made it this way in a V shape, and saved the ashes all winter, but you mustn't let them get wet and rot, because your lye wouldn't be, that's when she made soft soap. The lye wouldn't be good after it got wet and stood that through all winter. So he covered the hopper. It was this shape, you see.
V shape.
V-shape, and covered that. Then we put boards over the top of it, my father did, and saved the ashes, and we picked the certain wood for the ashes that come out of the stove. He knew what kind of wood he'd burnt.
What kind of wood makes the best ashes for lye?
Oh, I did know. Well, I believe it would be oak. I believe it would be. I believe it was oak. And then in the spring, we took, my brother was old enough to do things, and we took the cover off of the ash hopper, and let the ashes get wet and rot, and then put the poured water on. Everybody knew just how much, what to do. Poured water on it, and it soaked through, and then being in this shape, it drained through, and then he had made a kind of those boards the ends were in a trough, you see, and the lye ran out, and she used crocks. You had to use earthenware. You couldn't use wood because to catch the lye in, and then saved that and built and used a great big iron kettle to make the soap. Mm-hmm. And that soap had to, when they killed hogs, we saved the soap grease. Saved your soap grease up and put it in this big iron kettle and built a fire under it and had the soap grease and made the lye. And the lye, or made the soap, soft soap. And the soft soap was kept in the cellar with the smokehouse cellar, the cellar that had a dirt floor, and we had a barrel, the soap barrel. And when she made soap, she poured it in there. And she used that. Then other soap for other things, for other laundry, she used, the hard soap. She bought cans of lye, and when she had cooked her lye soap, just the right degree and so on, in the kettle, then she poured it out, and on something, what did she pour it out? She poured that on wood, somehow, wooden troughs or something, and it got cold and hard, then she cut it.
What's the difference between the soft soap and hard soap?
Hard soap, cans of lye. Mary wore lye.
So you use canned lye for hard soap,
Yes,
and you made the homemade lye for soft soap.
that's exact.
Well, thank you. It's almost lunchtime.
Well,
Anything else you want to tell me?
I was trying the Burt Welty murder, but that isn't the only murder that I've seen in Oklahoma. Do you remember what are they tearing up this house? here quite a few years back, where those bankers went for 90 years. They robbed the bank and took their money out of the bank, the savings out of people's safety deposit boxes, and spent the money horse races in Canada, and they lost the Lewis's. The Lewis's, their home, their parents' home was here in Stillwater, and the Lewis's had the Lewis's went for 90 years or 99 years. You see, that's just here a few years ago.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yes.